Good morning. Vimala Thakar's series of talks on intensive self-education. And I'm on page 15. And the topic is defenselessness. In this process of purification of the emotions, I am the educator and I'm also the one being educated. Thus the purification comes about through education. There is no other way. And while I'm educating myself, I observe. The education begins with observation. Observation leads to understanding, and understanding leads to a natural, easy falling away of the false that has been exposed as the false. That is all that happens. You don't drop the past, it gets dropped. However, I may notice that there are certain habits, tendencies, which even under observation don't fall away. At such times I stop and question myself. Am I defending my anger in any way? Am I justifying my anger in any way? Whenever anger moves and expresses itself in relationships, is there a desire, an inclination to defend that behavior, to justify it? Is there an inclination to attribute it to others so that I'm not responsible for it? If I defend myself and say others are responsible for it, that is one way of holding on to the weakness, to the habit patterns. When I hold the other responsible for it, I do not feel the sting of the understanding that the observation has caused. Observation causes a sting. It pierces through your sensitivity, and that is how the past drops away. But when you defend yourself, you create an immunity against such penetration. You have to be naked of all defenses in the moment of observation, so that whatever is seen can fall away if it is false. On the mental level, purity of perception. And purity of the glasses. That's better. On the mental level, purity of perception. It seems to me that one who is interested in investigating the essence of life, the meaning of life, the content of absolute unconditional freedom should guard oneself against three poisons: ideation, idealism, and comparison. You might have noticed that our simple perceptions get reduced to ideas, to an abstraction. The human brain has been trained to reduce perceptions, sensations, and interpretation of those sensations to an abstraction. The communion with what we see or what we listen to gets arrested as soon as ideation takes place. One has to learn to listen, to perceive, to touch, without reducing the beauty of that communion to ideation. As soon as thoughts come in, they reduce the communion to an idea, and a wish gets formulated. The thought cherishes the wish, and the desire becomes an ambition, then an obsession, and efforts are made to obtain it. If the communion had been fulfilled, then it would not get reduced to an idea that the thought carries over to the next moment. So, if the communion had been fulfilled, then it would not get reduced to an idea that the thought carries over to the next moment, cherishing that beautiful image. If the image was not created, there would be perception, appreciation, and then the ending of it. Freedom from the process of becoming. One has to learn to live with oneself instead of running after ideas away from one's center, trying to impose the ideals upon oneself. Why should there be any aims and ideals in life? Life is for living. Life is for relating ourselves to the divine around us and within us. But ideals are constructed and effects ignored. You run after ideals, always away from your center, trying to impose them upon yourself. Instead of dealing with what one is, and finding out what to do with oneself, one is split between what is and what one seeks after. That which is ignored, and that which is not there is sought after. That is how seeking and searching begin to stimulate ambition, and efforts for the process become the content of your life. Investigate and discover what one is, and let that being uncover and unwind slowly and gradually in every moment and in every relationship. So investigate and discover what one is, and let that being uncover and unwind slowly and gradually in every moment and in every relationship. Secondly, one has to discipline the mind not to compare itself with others. The holiness contained in you has no chance to express itself if you are busy with the struggle of running away from yourself. It seems to me that the temptation to compare oneself with others is the beginning of the process of becoming. Why is it that we cannot accept ourselves as we are? Why is it that we are not satisfied in allowing our potentialities to blossom and flower and feel fulfilled in being whatever we are? The process of becoming takes you away from the center of your life. The process of becoming and comparison removes you from the attitude of the learner. There can be no discovery in the process of becoming, acquiring, owning, possessing. They close you in. Though in the process of becoming you feel you're acquiring many things, owning prestige, power, fame, money, transcendental experiences, it is really an ego centered process which removes you from the mainstream of life. It's a closing in process. The more you acquire, the more isolated you become by that acquisition. The more you own and possess, the more isolated you get from the field of action and interaction of innumerable energies that are contained in the cosmos. So we have to learn to be open and receptive instead of getting closed in. Understand what you are, and with that understanding, you may develop a discipline, an inner order and humility which relaxes you, and relaxation stimulates intelligence. Living in the present, one has to discipline the mind and not to dream about the future or think of the past. It seems to me that one has to learn to live every moment so thoroughly, so fully, with the wholeness of one's being, that one goes through the pain or pleasure caused by the relationship with life completely. If it is pleasure, you smile, and if it is pain, there are tears. But we get hurt, nourished at hurt, and can't look at the next moment. Life expresses itself through tears and sorrow as much as it expresses itself through happiness and smiles. One lives through the tears without any inhibition, without imposing any theories, and one lives through the pleasure so thoroughly that the intoxication of this moment is not carried over to the next, so that there is no need to look back and recall how pleasant it was. You are free of that pain or pleasure to look and be available for the next moment and the next relationship freely and innocently. We are so burdened by the past moment that we have no time to look at the present moment. So the mind gets heavy by the end of the day or by the evening of life. Only memories of a pleasure and pain remain. The pains that are dead and gone, and pleasures that are dead and gone. We carry the burden of the dead within us. It seems to me that healing comes in psychological suffering by beginning to live every moment very thoroughly, completely, and very precisely and very accurately. Minimizing areas of reaction. One has to educate the mind to minimize the areas of reaction and response. To react and respond only when you are directly involved, when it is your responsibility. Not reacting to whatever is seen and heard with your likes and dislikes, preferences and prejudices. One educates the mind to see, but to judge not, to hear, but react not, to remain in a state of observation, which is a reaction free attentiveness. Movements born of restlessness are not action. The mind should be used for action and not for reaction. An inner steadiness will keep us free of constant motion. The inner steadiness comes about when a person does not want anything from this mad society based on violence, when one is content in one's own being and does not aspire to become what one is not. The simplicity of contentment brings about an elegant state of non motion. Desires like ambition, the urge for security, the urge to dominate through assertion, and fear of the unknown keep us completely restless. The physical and mental movements are in reality reactions to these compulsive activities within. So, desires like ambition, the urge for security, the urge to dominate through assertion, and fear of the unknown keep us restless. The physical and mental movements are in reality reactions to these compulsive activities within. This simple truth must be understood. Restlessness weaves bondage. Living one's understanding without a time lag. As soon as you understand the truth of a fact, live that understanding without a time lag. It is in the time lag between the understanding and the action that there is fermenting of disorder. There is a desire to act, but the desire remains unfulfilled, fermenting in the laziness, in the sluggishness, in the chaotic habits. Even if understanding takes place in the depths of your being, and the intellect catches it and verbalizes it, explaining the content of the understanding, and even if the emotions accept the understanding, but the body is lazy, lethargic, sluggish, and has not been educated to be alert, to be sensitive, it will not be able to keep pace with the understanding. If the body suffers from habitual laziness, if the mind suffers from the habit of postponement, then the body and mind will not have the energy, the intensity, or the alert sensitivity to keep pace with the understanding which is happening at the depths of your being, its momentum being quite different from the momentum of your organs. Even if the understanding takes place in the life of inquirers, there are very few who live it, and it is the living of the understanding that liberates, not the knowledge. Knowledge is sterile. Understanding has to move and express itself in relationship. Then only can the transformation take place. We have to have fearlessness and humility to live our understanding, come what may. It is very easy to talk about the unconditioned mind and freedom from the known, but very difficult to live it because of the consequences. The society may not accept you, may not acknowledge you, may not respect you. Therefore, in actual relationship, you accept the authority of every silly thing that the society has created. You're afraid of being alone with the truth, and yet you want to discover the truth. We have to be careful not to resist the movement of understanding within ourselves, not to put up self-defenses, because understanding of the facts of life is not always pleasant, not pleasurable. It may disturb the mind. It may create an inner compulsion for the mind to give up things that the mind enjoys and seeks. It may disturb the habits of the body. Understanding is an austere force. It's a dynamic force. Austerity has dynamism because austerity is purity, and purity is dynamic. One is not using the word purity in a moral sense or an ethical sense, but using it in a scientific sense. to live one's own understanding, however little that may be, without any thought given to the consequences thereof, is being loyal and faithful to one's own understanding. Then there will be no time lag between understanding and action. It is the living of the understanding that liberates. Understanding has to move and express itself in relationships. Then only the transformation can take place. Correlation of the particular with the whole. One educates the mind to correlate deduced conclusions with all the other fields of knowledge and action. So one educates the mind to correlate deduced conclusions with all the other fields of knowledge and action. Out of that correlation, understanding blossoms. The action of correlation results in an intuitive perception of the integrated truth. When a person correlates particulars with one another and arrives at a perception of the whole, then the inner growth takes place. Intuitive perception results in understanding, which becomes the substance of your being. If one can't correlate what the reason deduces with all other aspects of life, then one only has a collection of conclusions. I'll read that one more time. Correlation of the particular with the whole. One educates the mind to correlate deduced conclusions with all the other fields of knowledge and action. Out of that correlation, understanding blossoms. The action of correlation results in an intuitive perception of the integrated truth. When a person correlates particulars with one another and arrives at a perception of the whole, then the inner growth takes place. Intuitive perception results in understanding, which becomes the substance of your being. If one can't correlate what the reason deduces with all the other aspects of life, then one only has a collection of conclusions. And that's the end of this first chapter. So tomorrow I'll continue with chapter number 2, which is about human relationships. So I wish you a great day. Bye.